Welcome back to Beyond the Headline, everyone. I'm so excited that you're with us on the show today because I'm here with one of the founders of Owlet, Jake Colvin. Jake, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. This is a great opportunity.
Can we start out with you just sharing the genesis of Owlet because you guys have a really special story?
Yeah, no, definitely. So Owlet came about with actually the idea, the brainchild of two of our other co-founders, Tanner Hodges and Kurt Workman. And early on, Tanner had actually been working in the hospital as, I believe, an RNA, and he was going through nursing school or starting nursing school. He was just seeing the pain of pulse oximetry, that little red light they put on your finger, how there's cords. He saw that patients hated it. He saw that people were always tripping over it, and it just a nuisance, basically. So he reached out to one of our other co-founders, Kurt Workman, who was an engineer, started asking, like, how can we make this technology wireless? How can we improve that experience for patients across the board, not just infants in the hospital? So they started looking into that and diving into that, and pretty early on realized that even though nurses and staff love the idea, that administrators aren't the people that close to the pain. So they're not necessarily on board unless they can see, the financial reason or technological reason why that change would be necessary. About the same time, Kurt was actually helping his aunt with her two newborn twins. They were born premature. They had some serious health conditions, and she was told that you basically need to watch your kids 24 hours a day. And so she was trying to do that faithfully, but I mean, even with, I've only had individual children at a time, but I can't imagine doing that with twins at the same time with those kind of concerns. And so she had cousins and nieces and nephews and whoever could help come watching them. And so he was in there with them, and just seeing how much stress and how much anxiety she had, said, why is there not something for a parent like this? Why is there not something better out there? And so the idea switched. It switched from let's build a hospital technology for hospital use for all patients to let's build something that can be used in the home, that's comfortable, that's safe, that's convenient, that works with parents and their desires to take care of their kids, that's in the home, giving parents peace of mind. And so that's basically what Owlet came out of.
And one of the things that you and I were just chatting about briefly is that you didn't go out and try to build a solution. You really went out with that lean startup mentality and said, hey, what is your problem? What were the results of that?
So there's actually a couple things. One of the things is early on we actually funded the company through business competitions. And from that very standpoint of let's scrutinize every single aspect of the business, of the product, of the interaction with parents, of the way parents interact with the product, with the app, and everything. And let's really see, like, okay, how can we really solve the parents' need? And those competitions, I think, did a couple things for us. One, it made us really focus on every single detail, put every single detail to question, and then also go and have those details judged by industry experts, telling us and giving us feedback. And so we would go back and we would change how we were looking at things. But the other thing is it also gave us the opportunity early on, before we even had a product, to start getting into homes and start working with parents, and that's never changed. So from that earliest stages to where we had a product, we went through close to 2 years of testing, in-home testing with hundreds of families, tens of thousands of hours, every aspect of the product. We wanted to see what parents liked about the app, how they interacted with it, what things were just nice fluff to have, and what things actually were beneficial to the real core issue. And we've gone through a lot of iterations. We've changed the product, we've changed the way the product interacts with people quite a bit, actually, the way it looks, the way it feels. And that's all been driven through parents' feedback on this is what the actual pain is, this is what we actually need to have peace of mind versus a product that offers all these great features.
I'm really glad you said that because there's so many, and I've seen in a lot of the comment threads people saying, when are you going to do this and when are you going to do this? But there's such high stakes with Owlet that you really want to focus on your main things and do them really, really well. When you were having those conversations with parents, how did you approach it? Do you ask them questions? Do you wait for them to ask you questions?
It was actually a combination of both of those, as well as we used a lot of fun techniques as well. We would come in with a fake prototype that looked like something that you could be used, and we would see how the parents interacted with it. We'd ask them questions, we'd survey them, we'd send out surveys to separate just email bodies of parents. We'd have them ask us questions. Honestly, I spent probably 2 years in homes with parents, just watching how they would put this on. And we would just take scrupulous notes on, like, okay, they put it on this way. And then we'd watch and see if other people did it the same way. We'd say, why are parents putting it on this way? We intended for it to be put on this way. And so just really breaking down that whole experience, breaking down, I mean, the way a human being interacts with technology was, I think, really insightful, just to, at times, just be a fly on the wall and just watch them. We spent a lot of days where we would give them something and say, we want you to do this. And like, well, can I have instructions? We're like, no, we don't want to give you instructions. We just want to see how you do that. And we would see what the pain points were, where they would struggle, what was difficult. And really through that, through, like I said, building prototypes, really cheap prototypes early on and getting in the home and testing those prototypes before actually manufacturing anything on scale, really just broke down like what is something a parent would use, what is something a parent would like, both from a design and aesthetic standpoint as well as from a functionality standpoint.
I think that's so important. And during those first 2 years, Jake, there's such an importance, then and now, of observing the difference between feedback and action. It's great for me to say, hey, I want these 10 features, but it's one thing for me to actually use them. How did you guys balance that out?
Trial and error. For a while, we would say, okay, enough parents are saying they want this kind of a feature, and so we had a number of other features that were in the works and that actually worked at one point earlier on that we just did not include in the current product. We had a whole number of features in the app that were allowing parents to track breastfeeding or bottle feeding. We had things in there to let them track medications if they gave the infant medications. We really, the old mentality was, just build an extra widget, build an extra thing in there, and then, people will love it because they'll be like, oh, sweet, it's got that extra feature. And it was painful and difficult because, a lot of time and a lot of hours went into trying to establish those features to then, at times, pare them back and cut them back. And a lot of late night conversations about what is it we really want to provide parents, and just focusing on that core mission of this is our goal, provide parents with peace of mind. And then that made it a lot easier to say, well, even though this is a nice feature and we'll keep it on the back burner for possible future addition, in the meantime, it doesn't actually help us meet that core goal. It's just something that makes it more convenient or in ways adds other benefits. But that core goal was, how can we alert parents and let them know if something's wrong? And so we continually had to go and then cut back till we got down to those core things. And that's what the product is today. A lot of people, like you mentioned, have seen, probably from the past if they were following us, like there's other things that we intended to include, rollover alerts, temperature, skin temperature, things like that. And while the capability is still there, and while some of that technology is built in, it's not currently being used because we wanted to make sure that we completely nailed the absolute most vital functionality of the product.
I'm really glad that you explained it in that way, especially in light of the late night conversations of, is this really achieving what we set out to do, just as our core mission? We're not going to dictate the future. Can you give us an example of something in the past that you did have to cut? You still have the functionality for it, but it just wasn't a core part of the product today.
Yeah. We spend a lot of time at baby trade shows. It's not somewhere I ever pictured myself being in my life, but seeing thousands and tens of thousands of times of people with similar mindset of just like, we want to provide stuff for baby. And baby is a booming industry. It's crazy how many things are out there for infants, a lot of which is helpful, a lot of which is just fluff, a lot of which is just fun. But in that, we saw a lot of things that parents were interested in, like skin temperature was one of those. Parents want to know what their child's temperature is, which makes perfect sense. I mean, as a dad myself, if my kid's running a fever, I end up waking up every 2 hours or so and going back in and checking to see if the fever's improved, if it's gotten worse. When they're especially really young, you have to check very diligently, and if there are certain thresholds at which you have to take them to the doctor. And so we had early on built in, okay, we want skin temperature on this thing. We want it to be able to tell parents what their baby's temperature is, if their baby's comfortable, if their baby could potentially be running a fever. And so we actually designed that in, spent time focusing on that, thinking about that, working on how would that look in the app, how would parents interact with that, what type of feedback would they get? Because it's not so simple to take a skin temperature from a foot and say this is your body's internal temperature. I mean, our feet and our hands are the first thing to lose temperature as soon as you're a little bit chilly. And so there was a lot of work that would be going into extrapolating from that data an actual internal temperature. So while we were focusing on it, thinking this adds to our mission of giving parents peace of mind, it wasn't at the core of our mission, which is just breathing in oxygen. Is my baby okay? Is my baby breathing? And so eventually we cut that. It's actually currently still built in to where the hardware could be very quickly added. It wouldn't have to be redesigned. And we have the intention that maybe one day we'll add that back in as we see fit, as we see it's necessary, as we see that it really benefits parents beyond what we're trying to benefit. But that was one of those things that for us was hard to cut because we know what it's like to wake up late in the night and be like, okay, let's go check the kid's temperature again and make sure they're okay. When was the last time you gave them the medicine? Let's make sure we're not overlapping and things like that, which is hard when you're half asleep. But
it's hard when you're awake.
Yeah, it's hard when you're awake too. But at the same time, it's not doing what we intended to do. It's a wonderful feature to have in the future, and that's why it was so hard to cut. But it's not providing that core peace of mind on, is my child breathing, is my child okay?
Have you guys had a feature, Jake, that you cut and is now reintegrated into the product?
Yeah, actually. Early on in the process, we had looked at doing an alarm version like we currently have, actually giving parents alerts and notifications if something was outside of safe parameters. And we started to go down a different path where we were looking at, this is probably about a year and a half ago, when Fitbit and all those started to become very, very popular, and we started looking at, I wonder if parents more than that would like to just know insight to their child, whether their child is sleeping well at night, when their child starts rolling over, when their child is going to wake up, all of those types of active things. And so for a while, we actually took the alarm and the alarm strategy out of the product. And you could still see the vital signs. You could still see at least the heart rate and the oxygen levels and see what was going on in the earlier model. But there was no alarm built in. So that was, again, one of those several late night discussions and looking at feedback from parents and going back out and re-surveying and re-spending time with parents for as nice as those things are, at the end of the day, as a parent, I don't really care as much to know when my child's going to wake up as much as I want to know, is my child okay? And to have that alert, to know that if there's something wrong, we'll be notified.
And when you're sitting and having those late night conversations, a lot of it is you just have to have conviction in the direction you're going. How do you guys make decisions as a team?
So one of the things that I think brings the conviction, I'll touch on that first, is how much time we've spent with parents. And not just myself, but other founders as well, other team members as well, from all different aspects, from a marketing side, interviewing and working with parents and taking surveys with them, not just from a how do you want this marketed, but until we actually needed a marketing team, everyone that was on the marketing team was actively just working on what is the customer experience and how should we address that. So I think that's one of the things that helps with conviction is one, we all know we're here to make a difference, first and foremost. Second was, this is what parents are saying. This is what parents are overwhelmingly saying, and what they're looking for, what they want. And so despite the best efforts of, I think at times, potential mentors or industry experts are saying, this is where the industry is shifting. The industry is shifting to this Fitbit type model. The industry is shifting here. Mm-hmm. Instead, for us, it was, what is our real goal, and what do our parents actually want? And so having those parents involved, I think, was vital to us getting here. From there, we've always had a pretty open basis to where, even though Kurt is the CEO, and we know at the end of the day he has final say in what we do, and we all support that, it was very, very open in terms of everyone got to put in their discussion, everyone got to spend time presenting on findings that they had, and we generally would always bring it down to a vote at the end of that. Even though Kurt could technically override or overrule that vote, he rarely, if ever, did, just because we all came to the same conclusion and we're on the same page.
And as you move forward and you have these experiences fueling you, it's so nice when you can say, hey, I've seen this. This has happened before. I know how to handle it. Are there any core learnings that have been really crucial for you?
There have been a lot. It's, I actually spent a long time at the university, just getting my bachelor's degree, working full time or part time, and going to school part time, and switched majors several times and looking at a lot of different things. And I feel like Owlet, in all reality, was the culmination of years and years, close to 11 years or more of university experience, where in all honesty, for every class I took and for all the learning that they gave us in certain areas, and I didn't study business by any means. It kind of came full circle, and it really started to make sense with Owlet, actually seeing how these things work in practice, seeing that business is not this thing where you make a plan and you go out and you make money. It's a thing where you're interacting with human beings and their needs and their wants, and the more you can align yourself with a purpose that really meets their needs and really meets their wants and helps them in some way, the more successful that business will be. And that's something that's really stuck with me. The whole idea of a lean startup thing has really stuck with me. The idea that in the first year, through those business plan competitions, we won a fair sum of money, but not by any means a lot of money. And somehow we still were able to run a business for over a year and do development and bring in talented, passionate engineers that really added so much value to this. And that was through, okay, before we make any decisions, we want to test this in the cheapest and the easiest and the quickest way possible. And then we're going to test it with a prettier, nicer, more realistic version. Then we're going to test it with an actual rough but working prototype. And then we're going to test it again. And just going through that really made me realize that you don't have to. We've made costly mistakes with manufacturing and other things, and I think every company has. But you don't have to, I guess, stumble in the dark or just throw a bunch of money at a problem to make things work. Really, the more time you invest in studying out the problem and understanding what the real pain is and what potential solutions are, and then testing those, I think the faster you get to a viable solution that people are willing to pay for, which is absolutely necessary if you want to run a company, as well as something that will make a difference.
So I did want to focus on the future, but I want to take a couple steps back now because of that answer. And you mentioned that in the beginning, you're attracting engineers to an idea. You can't pay them, and you really don't know if it's going to work or not. Going back when I was doing some research, I saw like old versions of Owlet. And I almost thought that it wasn't the same product because this one is so slick and small and it looks like a fun sock that I would put on my baby. Can we rewind just for a couple of minutes of what it was like to have that product, be testing it with your team, go into a parent's home?
Yeah, definitely. From earlier images, and people will probably start trying to look up and look at earlier images now too, but from our standard looking back right now, we think, man, that was an ugly product. Why would any parent want to put that on their kid? But it was very functional. And it came out of a team of engineers that made a very functional, very real solution. And it was interesting because at the time, even though now we look back and think, why would any parent want to buy that? A lot of parents did. I mean, there was nothing else out there. And so we had early on a Kickstart type platform where we did pre-sales on our website with images of that sock that almost looked like a cast. I mean, it was big and bulky and wrapped around the shin and around the top of the foot and around the whole foot. And it had long strips of fabric that would wrap around, and parents wanted that. And when we bring that into parents' homes, they thought that was the coolest thing. They thought, this is so cool that you can put this thing that to us now is huge and bulky and ugly on my child's foot, and it actually does something. And so it surprises us to see how much people love the idea of something like that bringing them peace of mind, kind of almost regardless of the form factor. and or the aesthetics of it. And so using that in parents' homes, I mean, the original version was it took several days to make one, just because we went through this painstaking process of having these flexible electronics that had rigid circuit boards as well, encased in silicone and encased in like an outer shell, and then you had to let that cure for a certain amount of time, and it was interesting. It was a bit of a pain, to be honest. It wasn't really viable in terms of manufacturing at all, but when parents would get that in their home, they still loved it. They still wanted this on their child. And a lot of early testing, like I said, we'd use foam. We would just have like empty shells of electronics, and we would just see like, if we could tell you that this little piece of foam would do this, what would you think about that? What would you feel about that? And how would you use that? And regardless of the fact that it honestly looked like nothing, they wanted to use it. They gave us great feedback. And so really that early version was a major, major stepping stone for us to get to where we are today. From there, we found that although you can continue to run lean forever, and you could run lean and do everything in-house. I mean, all of our engineering was done in-house. So that says a lot to be able to bring in a team to do that in-house. And we didn't use existing pulse oximetry components.
And it's
We went
so
ahead
small.
and designed our own. Yeah, we designed our own pulse oximetry components instead of using like plug and play type things, because we wanted it to work the way we wanted it to work, the way parents said they wanted it to work.
Overachievers, overachievers.
Yeah, and so through that process, one of the other things I learned was, if you have the means and the ability to spend something on it, to have investors and have that funding, that really is a very powerful thing too, because it would take us to the next level. And we worked with some great design firms and brought some other really, really talented people on board that we couldn't get otherwise, that really helped us reshape that from that early prototype to what it is today, to the more sleek, to the cute, and to the baby friendly. It looks like it belongs in a nursery. All of those aspects really came out of all the early feedback with the big ugly boot that then became actionable, and like, okay, people want this enough. Now let's see how we can just make it the best product on the market.
I'm so happy you said that, because it's just this really nice stepping stone. Like, we know what you guys did in the early days. Then you guys raised capital, and you have a team of advisors. You have design firms. How did they help shape where you are today?
One of the things I'll give a pull for is we work with Techstars, which a lot of people are familiar with Techstars, some people are not. There's a number of things like Techstars in the country that are basically like an incubator and accelerator for companies, where young startups can go in and work with industry experts. They generally move places. We actually moved to New York City. We moved the whole company out to New York City. Lived in some really fun, interesting neighborhoods. At times had 8 guys sleeping on the floor of a studio
It's
apartment.
cozy.
And yeah, it stayed warm in the winter that way. And worked with a company called RGA out there. That's one of the leaders in digital marketing and things like that. And really, as much as we felt like, oh yeah, we really know the vision here. We've talked with the parents. We see what they want. We've gone out and we've done all these surveys. We've won all these business plan competitions. Really, it's like, wow. When you bring people in that have spent their whole careers trying to make products and make like expert decisions within businesses, and you can't, no amount of like startup gumption or like willingness just to go out there and do it can by itself make up for people that actually have the experience, people that have taken the time to dedicate their careers and their lives to making a difference in an area, whether that's a design area or whether that's how electronics function with people, how apps interact, like whatever it might be, communications. I mean, really at the end of the day, it is definitely very, very valuable to bring in people that are industry experts, people that see what we're doing and are passionate about it, because we've come across thousands and tens of thousands of people through this process, a lot of which thought this is an amazing thing, like you could just blow this up and make it this big over here in this area, and other people that, even though they have that same vision, they understand at heart and they're passionate about why we're doing what we're doing. And so those are the kind of people that we partnered with, people that really saw what we were doing and are okay with the fact that at times we make decisions that, from a business standpoint, some in the world might say, you could be a lot more profitable if you did it this way. But to us, it's like, that's great, but no, that steps away from our core values of providing the very best we can to parents. And having people aligned with that vision and having them on board with us, I think has made a huge, huge difference.
And what's the experience been like, Jake? So whether it was, say it's a design firm, for example, you partner with a firm, values are aligned, you're set. And then they come back. So you guys have been working on this for years and it's your baby. And they come back with an idea that's totally different. Not bad different, not good different. It's just totally different. Yeah. How does that feel? How do you approach that?
That went into, well, two things. We have some amazing designers in-house that have been with us from the very beginning. Ben Lee and Michael Bunn have been absolutely phenomenal in their decision-making, their design, their foresight. Because a lot of the things that you see in the product today that design firms helped us on and helped create and help polish, we actually had earlier prototypes or earlier glimpses of that's what it could be like from our designers in-house. And so while the design firms we work with have really helped us know, okay, this is how you get to that. This is how you make that so it's manufacturable. This is how you get to where it's doable at scale. Really, it's just been closely working with our design people in-house that are young and just passionate about what we're doing. That I think that's really helped shape that conversation, because it wasn't so much they would come back and say, here's a new concept, run with this. I mean, we were working hand in hand with them, and actively throughout that whole period, myself and Ben and others were out testing the new design concepts they were coming up with and still putting it against that age-old test. Is this what parents want? Is this what parents need? And moving forward from there.
So it's really more of a balance. It's not outsourcing.
No, yeah, that we've definitely found that. And I think for some companies and for some businesses, it's okay to outsource. It really is. Like, there's professionals out there that can do things a lot better than I can, a lot faster, a lot more cost effective. But there's also a lot of products out there that their sole purpose is just the entertainment of people and making people happy and giving them something to do. Whereas with our product, we really wanted to provide parents with that peace of mind in a way that we felt confident when we go to bed at night that other people are being taken care of. And so that, I can say from personal experience, also talking with Kurt and others in the company, that's a burden. That's a big stress to feel, not only the worry for your own children, but
others,
or the hundreds of children or the hundreds of families that you've talked to that day, or the potentially thousands of customers that you have. And you want this thing to work in a way to where you're confident and you feel comfortable that they're being taken care of. And if things don't go well, or if things don't work the way they're supposed to, and we're on that immediately, trying to fix that and resolve that problem, because to us, again, we care about their kids just as much as we care about our kids and their experience.
It's fantastic, and it says so much about each of the things. Like I was saying before, something I really admire about your work is just a very thoughtful approach to everything that I've seen, and I can observe it being only the parent of a dog, not even a child. So I can't imagine when a parent comes to your site how they feel. Before we go, Jake, I'd love to just spend a couple of minutes, if you have time, on manufacturing. You mentioned before that there are some mistakes in the early days. What can you advise founders on who are in those shoes?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So I think it's fair to say that we've been through the ringer with manufacturing. Again, a lot of that from our own fault, meaning early on we designed something without manufacturing in mind that would take us days to make each one individually, that was not manufacturable at scale, that although it accomplished the purpose, I think you really, that's one area where even if you don't work with a design firm, eventually you're going to want to make this thing, whatever it is. You're going to want to manufacture it. You're going to want it to be manufactured well. And again, not an outsourcing type of thing, more a working hand in hand. Start with manufacturing design in mind. And I know a lot of great engineers already do that. They're trying to do that. They look at it in terms of, okay, how can we design this in a way that it could be manufacturable? In fact, kind of a funny story on that, our very, very first prototype that we had, was actually built on breadboards. It was probably about this big. Wouldn't fit on an elephant baby's foot, and but it was functional. You could take pulse oximetry from it with your hand, and then it would actually send it wirelessly to a little thing we created for the computer, and it would read out on the computer in a really simple way. But it was functional. So we took that to who currently is our CTO, Zach Balmsta, and over Christmas break, back I think in 2012, over Christmas break, we gave him that and said, hey, can you do anything with that over the Christmas break, just looking at maybe a little bit more feasible or manufacturable? And we came back from Christmas break, and he just tossed us a computer chip that was a little bit bigger than a quarter, and said, there you go. That's everything. That's your wireless is built into there, your everything for pulse oximetry is built into there, your batteries, your CPU for like controlling everything, like it's all right there. I'm like, did you take a Christmas break? He's like, yeah, I took 4 days. And again, the idea of you find people that are passionate in their area. Like each of us comes from very different backgrounds as founders, and Zach is an engineer, and he's a fabulous engineer. He's so talented. And so having people like that in-house helps so much when you're then talking with the manufacturer, because you really drive that discussion. Early on, we went through, after having the design that was so hard to manufacture, we tried to manufacture it at scale, and they had a really high fail rate because of the process that we'd have to put them through. And because electronics don't like being overheated and squashed and have all these the whole process. It's not conducive to electronics being happy. And so we went ahead and we'd spent a lot on trying to manufacture a good number of those that we were going to send out to our early supporters, and they were failing, and we ended up tens of thousands of dollars that we lost in that. And so we went back and looked at the design again, and how can we make this more designable for manufacturing? And really we went through a number of manufacturers. I think it's safe to say you don't want to just sit down and get stuck with one manufacturer and be like, those are our guys for life. You might get lucky. You might find some right early on that are that way. But we were working with a lot of the manufacturers that make a lot of the wearable technology in the U.S. today, but they have very different constraints. They're looking at much simpler technology on an adult's wrist, which is much bigger in terms of parameters, much more leeway than 5 times that technology on the size of a dime fitting on top of an infant's foot. And so even though we'd start with manufacturing, they're like, yeah, we can totally do this. We'd put money into getting tooling set up and getting all that set up, and then it would come back that, no, we can't do this. So we'd switch manufacturers. And so we switched manufacturers a number of times. And finally, rather than trying to outsource to manufacturing companies that we know across the world could do this, we brought it right back home. So our manufacturing is currently with a company in Utah. It's about an hour's drive, maybe a little bit less. And so on any given day, we can just pop up there and be like, okay, we see that these are the issues coming off the line. We need to change that here. Or these are the things we'd like to improve in the future. And so even though you do lose some of that cost savings of working with an offshore manufacturer or outsourcing, really at the end of the day, having that control and that ability to iterate quickly is super helpful, especially in manufacturing. Because you'll give them a design that works great as a prototype and they'll manufacture it, and it won't work manufactured at scale. And so you have to design and redesign and iterate very quickly. And so being able to work closely with the manufacturer, I think, would be was a very helpful thing for us as well.
Fantastic, and I'm so glad that we got to cover that, because that's an essential piece of the puzzle. If you can't do that, you can't do much of else. Before we go, we always touch on 3 questions, Jake, that don't have anything to do with work. So we'll start with this one. If you could teleport anywhere or back to any time, what would you choose?
Oh, that's a good question. My major was actually European studies, focusing on Eastern Europe and European history. And I'm an avid sailor, and even though I'm landlocked, I'm a landlubber, I'd love to go back to some of those early exploration days and be on those ships, just exploring the world and meeting new cultures and growing what knowledge we had as people of what the world is.
I do wonder, what were their conversations like?
actually reading a lot of the transcripts and things from some of their
Oh, you know.
yeah, they had a lot of concerns we don't have today. Just simple concerns about surviving and not getting sick from from different ports, and having enough fresh water and fresh fruits or vegetables to keep themselves from getting scurvy and things like that, and going through miserable living conditions in that process. I mean, today we look at backpacking and we think, oh, this is great. I grab my backpack, I grab my hammock, and I'm out the door and enjoying nature. But for them, at times, I think it was a lot of life or death type situations to go do what they did.
Yeah, there's no Google Maps.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, next question. If you were a song, what song would you be?
Oh, that is so hard. Kind of pulling on my own childhood as well. I used to play jazz, and so I don't know. Jazz and blues both just kind of speak to me. It's like they don't necessarily even have to have words, but just the emotion of the music, where people are basically putting their soul in the music. There's a lot of great music today. I like a lot of modern music as well, but I think going back to some jazz songs, maybe some early Louis Armstrong songs.
That's a good one. You've done quite a few things. Last one. If you could give everyone a fortune cookie with your favorite saying on it, what would you put inside the fortune cookie?
It's a Latin phrase. It's
You knew that off the bat? Wow.
Spending 11 years at the university, you hear a lot of quips and a lot of sayings,
I
and a
wasn't
lot of
expecting that.
inspirational thoughts. I sang for a number of years with Brigham Young University choirs, and one of the things that we had was our motto, which was "Esse quam videri," which is to be rather than to see. That's impacted my life a lot, my thoughts. It's very easy to appear something and to, I guess, go through the motions, or to be insincere, or to be fake to reach a goal or an ends. But to actually be the thing that you're trying to sing, that's a real challenge in this life.
Love it. Very powerful way to end. It's been such a pleasure to spend time with you today. How can everyone stay up to date with you and also stay up to date with Owlet?
I know we often have things on our Facebook page, on Instagram, on Twitter, but anyone that has questions about starting a company or a business, and I'm not the expert in the world, I've just gone through this, they're more than happy to reach out to me directly as well. My email is jake@owletcare.com, owletcare.com, and free to reach out.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.